on today's StoryBeat.
You know, it's not the end of the world if it's something you're checking out and it doesn't work out, that's fine. But if you really got a heart for it, pursue it. Get a good teacher and don't let anybody ever say to you that you're not good enough, because you are. Deep down, we're all good enough. There's certain talents that everybody has. You don't have to be a James Galway. You don't have to be a John Coltrane to make your mark.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, making a return for his third appearance on StoryBeat, my guest today is the great jazz and world flutist, Michael Mason. Michael's been a professional musician and composer for 40 years, while simultaneously working in the fire service of the Downers Grove, Illinois Fire Department, recently retiring at the rank of lieutenant. Michael is one of the first responders from the Chicago area who flew to New York City just days after the destruction of the World Trade Center. He helped the New York City Fire Department and the Port Authority for many weeks. In 2024, Michael released his latest album called Luminosity, which follows up 2023's Impermanence, Transcendence in 2022, and Human Revolution in 2021. All are original jazz and world music compositions, which received approval for voting from the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences for Grammy Award consideration. Michael's musical influences come from James Newton, Ian Anderson, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Eric Dolphy, Sun Ra, Yusef Lateef, and James Galway. I've listened multiple times to each of his excellent records and can tell you Michael's impressive work will instantly soothe your soul with warm, beautiful melodies, gorgeous arrangements, and Michael's brilliance on the flute. I highly recommend you check out his wonderful recordings and music. Michael's currently in the studio mixing 8 new songs for release in 2025 on the AVG Records label, so be sure to look out for that. Michael's been gracious enough to lend us his radiant composition moments from Luminosity. Please be sure to stick around at the end of today's show to give it a listen. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm truly delighted to have the renowned flutist Michael Mason back on StoryBeat today. Michael, welcome to the show for the third time.
Stephen, thank you so much. Glad to be here again. It's 3 times, huh?
3 times. It's a charm.
It's a charm. Thanks for the introduction.
Oh, it's my pleasure, truly. So first of all, I want to say congratulations on your retirement. I'm sure the good people of Downers Grove are deeply grateful to you for your many years of service, and I say well done to you. How is retirement treating you?
I retired from Downers in 2012, but I've been teaching at the academies up until
Oh, is that right? I see.
just until last year. So I fully retired December 6th of last.
So you're just barely into it then.
Well, I'm into it, but obviously I'm into the music. Obviously, I've always been into the music while I've been firefighting, but now I'm putting a lot more time in, and we're dealing with a lot of things right now, recording wise, with the new album coming out called Us. That's a new album.
Us?
Yeah, it's called Us, and that's coming out in April or May of 2025.
So in other words, you're taking full advantage of your newly freed up time from having to be in the fire department.
Yeah, it's kind of still running the same. We're just maybe yeah, I think you're right. I think we have a little bit more time for me to get all these guys in line with the perspectives that we're doing. And we just left the mixing studio the other day, and then our engineer just went on to Abbey Road, so we had a little bit of time off. He's
Wow.
yeah, he's recording it in Abbey Road at the Beatles studio this week or last week, and
How cool is that?
yeah. So he's yeah. I guess they play our stuff in the studio while he's recording the other groups. I think he's recording something that's affiliated with Pink Floyd.
Oh, just a little group called Pink Floyd.
Yeah, just we're the little group. He makes the big money.
So I'm wondering, we last spoke in 2023. That was your second appearance. And I'm wondering, in the interim year and a half, if you have actually maybe discovered anything new or learned any new tricks, anything in the music world that is different now than it was a year ago.
Other than composing,
So what have you learned that's new in composing then?
well, I've created probably at least maybe 15 or 16 compositions.
Wow.
Some of those are going on the new CD. Some of them have already been created. Luminosity, I think, is the last one you have.
Yes, that's the one that I have most recently.
Yeah, that's with the cellos and the violinist on that. And so the new one is going back to more of a lot of drumming, a lot of great guitar players on there. So yeah, I'm just kind of bouncing all over the place. But cello is still on there. Ian Maskin out of Ukraine is still on there. Yeah, we're busy.
Tell me about the musicians that are on this. You just brought one up. Tell me about who's on this recording with you.
Luminosity has got my standby guys are always going to be Geoff Lowe on bass, and then Gessling on drums.
Eris Biscus.
Well, no, yeah, Eris is. I'm getting so confused. I believe he's on Luminosity. He may not.
He's definitely on Luminosity. I'm looking at the cover of the album right now.
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you. And that's about the extent of it, along with the other players.
These are your standby guys?
It's me, Geoff, I call him, but Geo's, I give him a nickname. He's my bassist, and he's one of the engineers that help assemble a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
through Pro Tools before we take it over to the big studios.
Mm-hmm.
And he's my bassist. So a lot of times I'll create the compositions, and Danny comes in, and he's a drummer, percussionist. So he works on Pro Tools too, along with the handpan playing. So the handpans are the stuff that we play with our hands on these drums
Right.
to create a lot of the backdrop.
So let the listeners know, what do they do for you musically, compositionally, arrangement wise? How do they help you make the record better beyond just the technical stuff with the computer?
Well, first of all, you got to have my musical idea. That's got to be laid down. I'll introduce the patterns and maybe A section or a B section. And I'll say, this is what we're kind of going for, guys. And then they'll take it. They'll be like, oh, wow, okay, we got to do this, we got to do that. And then I usually have the chord structure laid out, as well as most of the melodic function of the tune and how it's traveling. I'll probably have some type of groove. In other words, in what time signature maybe we'll be working in, 7/8, 6/8 or 4/4 or whatever it is. And from there is when we start putting everything together.
Or is everything written out on sheets, or how do you do it?
I have my notations on my, I call it scribble.
Scribble?
Yeah, it's not, I don't use actual notation per se, note, quarter note, eighth note, all that. No, I write down the chords. I write down patterns that go on a line, somewhat on a staff, you know, G sharp to F sharp to G sharp. And then I'll have a notation area of G sharp, A, B, or whatever. And that designates maybe the melody line. I don't want to box them in too much because that doesn't allow us to explore.
You want to do improvisation as you're recording in the studio.
Kind of, yeah. When we establish the form in the chords and the melodic, then we go for the improvisational aspects of the music. Maybe we'll extend an area, or we even decide who's going to take what solos. Once that's laid down, we usually go after the handpans to add in the modalities or the tonal qualities. You have to understand, I work at a workstation, which is a keyboard that produces massive amounts of sounds, of orchestral works, ethnic works. I can get instruments from Africa on this thing.
This is a synthesizer of some sort?
Yes, I would say it's a keyboard of a synthesizer type.
Mm-hmm.
It's known as an orchestral workstation.
Are you composing in the studio, or are you composing before you get to the studio?
I'm in my own home studio composing. I have to lay down the given tracks on my home studio before they come in.
I see.
And then I play it back for them and say, hey, man, this is what I'm thinking about. Or I'll call them in and say, hey, I got this idea, and I'll call Gio up and say, "Come on over to my studio. I've got to lay this down. Let's find a click track for it that works, and then he'll help me."
How often do they then contribute something that elevates what you're working on? All the time or just a little bit?
I would say most of the time
Most of the time.
they have to. I mean, I'll give them a lot of information. They know what I want.
Mhm.
It's a question of I may not be able to uh, express it Englishly or phonetically to them, but they understand when they hear it, they know a lot about my music, and they, oh yeah, yeah, okay, we get what you're going for, and they're always giving me crazy anecdotes like, well, what time signature are we in now, Michael? I said, well, we're in 22/8,
22/8.
and I said 22/8, and so Gio will be sitting there trying to count it out. Oh yeah, yeah. You know what, really, Michael? It's really not 22. It's 12/8.
Okay.
So then that helps us get a little better organized.
How long have you been working with these folks?
5 years with just
5 years.
well, yeah, almost, yeah, I'd say 4 or 5. Yeah,
So you have a good sense of each other and where you're gonna go while you're playing.
absolutely. Might as well call it a trio that's really laying a lot of this stuff down. But a lot of it's too is recording techniques. The flute work is tremendously intricate in regards to laying down melody structures and everything. Because you got to understand, sometimes melody is coming through the workstation. Now I got to get the flute onto that. And some of that could be pretty challenging because what you can do with your fingers on a keyboard is not necessarily what you could do with your flute.
Right?
So,
And you are still obviously playing the flute by hand. You're not using a keyboard for that at all.
no, that's all. Yeah, all that flute is natural flute, and that's why I practice flute every day.
You still practicing many hours a day?
I practice probably an hour and 20 on the flute every day just to keep up, do the
Mhm.
new facilities and things like that. And then the rest of the time I'd be composing or listening.
You know, the great cellist Pablo Casals
Yeah,
once famously was asked why he continues to practice 4 or 5 hours a day, and he answered, "Because I think I'm making progress."
yeah, right. Well, yeah, I'm not a good flute player.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm no James Galway. I consider myself an amateur with a decent facility.
I'd say you have better than a decent facility.
Well, in order to keep just what you guys listen to in regards to my music, in order to just keep that, you have to practice. I would tell every student in the world or anybody getting into their instrument, it's going to be with you for life. You're a student of the game.
What do you think keeps you disciplined? Do you just love it that much, or is there something that you have to do to keep at it?
Discipline. I mean, it's almost like firefighting. I discipline myself. I'm up every day at a certain time. I usually don't sleep past 7 a.m. Most of the time, my body wakes up at 4:30 in the morning.
Is that from years of doing that?
Years of practicing and years of firefighting, and along with the practicing and trying to keep up with everything. So I'm just an early bird kind of guy.
And your music obviously keeps you going at it. Yeah, you love the music, I assume.
Yeah, I time the day out when I'm going to do what or do whatever I got to do, along with my family life and everything else that I've got to deal with, paying the bills and stuff like that. So there's no way you want to be an artist. You got to love what you do, and then you got to dedicate yourself to some form of discipline to keep doing it, or else you'll fall into bad habits like getting up too late, going out partying too much, smoking dope, doing whatever they do. I don't do that. I have a couple of drinks every day, and that's about what I limit myself to.
Mhm. So let's talk for a moment about Luminosity, which I thoroughly enjoyed listening to. Where did the ideas for these songs come from? Do you have a clue where these come from? Are they just coming through you from the ether?
Sometimes I'll hear something in my head. It may be just a bass groove, something like that, and then I'll lay the bass groove down, and then I'll start working around the notation of that groove in relationship to key signatures. So let's say I got a bass groove of C, E flat to F, back to C or E flat, whatever. And then I find a chord structure, maybe that can go under that or over that. So then that's how it all kind of evolves. Another process would be I could be driving down the road and all of a sudden I hear something on the radio
Hmm.
and I'm listening to the background track of these things. I'm going, I think I got to elaborate on this. So I would kind of remember it in my head, come back and etch it down real fast on my recording things and just say, okay, look, this is what I'm going to try to do. Um, and then things just start to evolve. It takes me probably 3, 4, 5 weeks to create a simple sketch for the composition itself, and then call in Geo and Danny and say, I think we got something.
Do you work those sketches out on the flute or on the keyboard?
On the keyboard first, then the flute.
On the keyboard. And do you work it out where it's a piano sound or is there a certain sound?
Well, I can grab anything I want. At first, it's concert grand piano. I have to work it to hear the notation in the chord. Then I'll start moving over to the workstation in regards to sounds or bass sounds, or maybe I want a musical effect that I'm thinking is an African mode. And I'll switch over to the workstation and go, I need ethnic sounds of musical effects or something.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, it'll donate that material back to me in the key signatures I'm working in. Now, whether the format works or not is questionable. I also have tempo. I have, man, I mean, these keyboards now create so much, we call them backdrops or seascaping, behind things that ultimately sometimes change my mode of thinking. And now I'm often never giving up what I originally intended, but it may been my idea of meter, timing. And then, so now we'll adapt to that because I'll find something else. That's the problem with these workstations. They'll drive you crazy. I mean, I don't like to use it as gimmick. It's still solid, natural music. In order to duplicate it on stage, you still got to press the notes. You still got to play the notes. You still got to do the bass. You still got to do the drumming.
So your music, which is clearly in the world of jazz, I find it to be meditative. Do you think of it that way?
It is meditative.
And so what do you do to find that meditative thing? Is it from nature? Is it just you're just finding it as you're going? I personally don't know how you get there. So I'm just curious if you can say how you do.
I'm a spiritual person. How do I get there?
I mean, there's something special about the quality of it. It's very soothing to the soul.
Sometimes the workstation will create a backdrop, like voices or an air sound or something like that. Yes, I'm a very meditative person because I do study religions a lot. I'm basically a Catholic, and I also study a lot of Buddhism. Now, am I a true Buddhist? No. Do I meditate? Yes. I don't know sometimes even where it comes from.
Mhm. Well, that's what I was getting at. I think a lot of creative people don't know where it comes from. And I've read many, many quotes from people where they say that the art comes through them from somewhere else. It comes through them from the universe or wherever it is they say. Or it comes as a bolt out of the blue where they didn't think of it at all. It just happens.
All of the above.
All of the above.
For me, yeah. I mean, really. I mean, some days I could be hit with something and be like, wow, yeah, okay, I'm going to go down this road.
I'm just curious, the titles of your songs too. You consistently come up with, I think, titles that are evocative. They bring up an emotion or a feeling or a sense. Lots of titles of songs don't. They sort of are on the head a little bit. But yours are evocative. In particular, you have Prism, Northern Light, It's This Way, Reflection. I find those very interesting. And Drift, you have Drift. Where do those come from? Does it come before you write the songs? Do they trigger the songs? Or do they come after? Or is it sort of a mishmash of all of it?
Both ways.
Both ways.
Both ways. Sometimes I'll have the idea or to create, like on the new album, I think I got a tune called Dreams. So I know that I created the song before I gave it the title, but the titles usually come a little bit later because I'm always waiting on all the other input, from other players or whatever, because they could change the texture of something. And now I've lost maybe the original mood, but it's still there underlying. So it's hard to say, but most of my titles come from a spiritual point of view.
A spiritual point of view.
Yes, a soul searching point of view inside each of us.
Do you find that sometimes where it goes in the process with the other musicians, that it's not at all what you want it to be? Does that ever happen?
It does sometimes, it can change drastically. And then I'll pull the tune and I'll rework it maybe into a different fashion, which then will create a different mood, which then creates possibly a different title.
I think we talked about this before, if my memory's correct. Clearly, these are not songs that have lyrics to them. There's no words.
No,
It's pure music. Have you ever tried to put words to any of these?
I think I talked to you before about this. We're
Yeah,
looking at vocalists that'll produce vocal sounds.
but that's just sounds, not words.
No, no words. It would be hard. I mean, I could ask somebody, "Hey, man, when you hear this tune, could you write me a lyric line?"
Hmm.
A lot of artists do that.
Sure.
They'll take an instrumental and all of a sudden jazz is known for that. An instrumental tune, and then all of a sudden, Sarah Vaughan will come in and put words to it, to a line, like, as popular as Herbie Hancock's, Watermelon Man or whatever.
Right.
Watermelon Man never had a set of words until somebody else came up with it and put it on there,
Sure.
or Maiden Voyage or things like that. But
Probably Birdland probably had words put on it much after the fact.
again, absolutely, absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Hmm.
So if it happens, it happens. I just don't know when it will happen. I've got a couple of interesting ladies that want to try to do something like that, but most of the jazz singers I know, they're doing too many standards.
Standards, so they're not doing new stuff.
Well, if I was looking for anybody, somebody can, like an Al Jarreau or a scat singer, someone that's going to produce sound, not a lyrical message necessarily, other than off the title of the tune. When you give a songwriter a title, they're off and running.
Sure.
Now they can do just about anything.
Do you know of a group called Snarky Puppy?
No, I don't. I probably do.
I think you'd enjoy it. You should look up on the internet Snarky Puppy. It's a strange name, but they're very good.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
I am curious. When I write words. That's what I do for a living. I've written lots of lyrics and I've clearly written lots of scripts and books and so on.
Right.
I am unable to write because I write with words. I'm unable to write with certain kinds of distractions. I can't write when I hear other people speaking. So, in other words, I can't write with the TV on. I can't write with songs that have lyrics.
Right.
So, your kind of music is perfect for me to be able to put on as something I can have on while I'm using words in my head because I can think. Are you able to write with words playing? Are you able to write while there are people talking?
No.
You have to have quiet.
Yeah, that would distract me. Like I couldn't listen to a song with lyrics in the background while I'm creating.
That's what I wondered.
No.
Because there are people who can do that. I can't do it. You say you can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, if it was 3,000 miles away, maybe.
3,000 miles away.
No, that would be too distracting for me. There's some people that are, they're able to do that. I can't
All right. You're still arranging your own work then. Yeah.
always.
Always. And then the others come in and they contribute in some way to that arrangement.
Yes, they do. Yes. Or they can sometimes alter it and provide me a better path, maybe.
And that is part of the, correct me if I'm wrong, that really is part and parcel of the jazz musician's creed, that you bring in other people to that moment. It's not something that's rigidly written out ahead of time.
Right. Jazz music, or the improvisational world of music, is contributory.
Mm-hmm.
No one can claim the whole thing, so to speak. You know what I mean? It takes contributors. To me, it's not like writing well, even that, even in rock music or progressive rock or whatever, a group of guys get together, man, and it may be the one guy that brings it, And like the Beatles, I mean, just like one guy, I got a song, I'm coming in the studio, here I go, George Harrison, bum 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 dum dum, okay, whatever. And then they get a hold of it, and they're like going, okay, George, we really don't like this thing. But then George will go, well, coming back, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they're creating a collective sound, and the main body of work obviously will
Hmm.
go to the original, hopefully the original writer, but that is just the nature of making music, man. There is no, I don't care if it's Taylor Swift, I don't care who it is. They begged, borrowed, and stealed in order to get their deviation of their new proposal to the Music Society. There's few geniuses. The geniuses happened back in 15 and 1600s.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, like Mozart.
Beethoven, Bach. Yes, sure.
Well, yeah, I'll sit there, but guess what? All our music comes from that point of error
No
of
question.
understanding notation, everything that we do, the 12 diatonic scales, all that. I mean, Schoenberg, all, you know, we're reinventing.
Yes, for sure.
That's all we're doing.
You are doing the classic, you're standing on the shoulders of giants.
You have to.
Absolutely.
We get a lot of artists out there that serve with ego, and that's horrible.
Well, at this point, there are literally tens of millions of recorded songs in the world.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable how much is out there. It really is. And so that's part of the issue that I'm sure you go through all the time is how do you break through the clutter of everything?
Sometimes we run across stuff that, like, I'll be composing whatever, and all of a sudden I'll listen to it, or I'll run across it, or one of my players will go, "Hey, Mike, I think this guy's got a bass line just like yours."
Hmm,
And I'll be like, "Okay," and I don't find that unusual. There's only so many bass lines in the world to a groove
sure.
of any type of music, so to speak. And then I'll check it out and I'll say, oh, yeah, but you know what? It's in a totally different time signature. Or maybe it's a little this or whatever, because we don't want to infringe on copycatting type of anything. And our music, I don't believe, is ever resembles really anything that I.
No, but you can't help absorbing the world.
Exactly. It's like any of the lawsuits you hear that, that come in, like what was the big one was what? Harrison's My Sweet Lord. The big lawsuit. I forgot the name of the tune, the Shangri-Las or whatever it is. They tried to sue him
Yeah, I've forgotten it too.
for the
Yeah.
3-chord progression or whatever. Well, that 3-chord progression has been written 1,000 times. It's a question of the melody, maybe that goes over it. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So
Do you play other people's songs in order to then find inspiration? For instance, do you play classical music hoping to be inspired somewhere in there?
I play classical music to enjoy listening to it. I cannot play Mozart's Concerto in D anymore. I used to be able to do maybe the first movement on flute. It's too difficult for me at this
Too
point.
difficult.
Well, it is. I'm not a classical. I mean, I studied classical. That's where I came from.
Hmm.
I was kicked out of every conservatory you know of. I'm serious. I think I told you that before.
You have told me that before, but I've forgotten. I'm
I'm
glad you
not a,
reminded me.
I'm not a disciplined classical flutist. I'm an improvisational flutist. There's a big difference.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at, and I'm asking a poor question, is do you sit there and play on your flute other music, whether it's classical or modern, whether it's jazz or something else, and while you're playing it, you become inspired to create something new?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. Once in a while, I'll be up. I'll hear on the radio. I'll be upstairs. My wife will be up there. And I'm like going, yeah, what is that? Sometimes I hear something. So, or maybe it's on a CD. I'll start playing along with it. I'll say, oh, okay, cool, man. Now maybe I'm going to go down this melodic road too. And that creates something new.
Do you get feedback from your fans? Do you get email and stuff from fans?
Yes, we get a lot of.
So what I'm curious then is, do they ever tell you something about what you're doing that then inspires you further to do something new?
They just say, man, we love it. They're like what you're saying. They're like, hey, man, we're on the road to Minnesota. We put your CD in the car. I mean, we just love it. We're up in the cabin. We're doing this, we're doing that. It's like our backdrop, of what we do and how we're living our life. And they appreciate it.
Well, it takes your blood pressure down, is what it does.
Maybe it takes yours down, but
It raises yours.
well, because we're putting it together and trying to get it.
You're the end result that you had to go through with blood, sweat, and tears. I get to enjoy to take my blood pressure down.
That's right. Well, in
Mm.
the end, though, I hope when I listen, and I don't listen to my music once it's done, and we're done with the what they call the mastering session part of it. We'll hear it from A to Z, so to speak, and I can't no more until I hear it on YouTube or something like that. You know.
You play it live too, though, yeah?
No, we don't play live yet. We're waiting on the big contract to come through because it's a. I think I told you before. This is a 7, 8 piece group that has to be put on a stage. They're looking at us now to maybe perform at a couple of the big theaters uh, in Chicago and a couple other towns. But until that solidifies, it's a big investment to get this on the stage.
Oh, big investment. That's expensive.
At least 20 grand just to rehearse it and get it up there. And then I don't even know how you'd get reimbursed from it. But
Well, you get reimbursed by doing a contract and having somebody give you the money. That's how.
well, I mean, I'll take my flute out and go sit in and play at different places with other groups and stuff. That's not an issue. No big deal. I mean, I'm always asked to do that.
And you find yourself being asked regularly for that.
Yeah, but a lot of times I turn people down because I don't know what they're playing. I mean, hey man, you're doing some jazz stuff. Say, okay, good, I'll show up. Because they know I know certain things. Like they know that I know Wayne Shorter, Miles Davis, John Coltrane. They know that I can improvise and dance on that stuff. So to speak. I couldn't show up. Well, once in a while I would show up with a top 40 group.
Yeah, really?
So, oh yeah, the club groups. Mike, would you come out, bring the flute out? I need you to jam on All Along the Watchtower. I go, no problem. I'll see you tonight.
Do you still enjoy it?
Oh, I love it. It's awesome. That's where I came from, 60s and 70s. If it wasn't for that, I don't.
I mean, live performing. You still enjoy performing in front of an audience.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wish we could really get out there and do this type of thing.
Have you ever thought about recording live?
We have not this particular group. Back in the past, we have. I think I told you again. I had nothing but live recordings back in the day with the called Canterbury, the progressive rock groups that I started way back in the 70s. Yeah, I'm not foreign to that. That was a whole new era.
Well, yeah. I mean, you guys were in those days forging what we have now.
Almost, I would say yes. Yeah.
So somebody calls you and says, "Come on out, we're going to play X, Y, or Z. We would like you to do it." And you say, "Sure." Is there something special that you do to prepare for that? Is there some way that you psych yourself up for it? Do you do anything physically? How do you prepare for a performance?
Well, I kind of know what the group's about or what they're asking me to do, so I'll show up. I'll usually have my own mic or something like that I know, for my own type of sound that I want. And no, I don't prepare. I just show up and go, what key we playing in, guys? And they'll say, hey man, we're starting this tune in B flat major, and then it's going to go to this. I go, okay, let's go.
And it's all off of you listening to what they're playing and playing to it.
Right. My ear is most musicians that we work with and that we deal with have an ear for a key signature. And especially if it's jazz and improvisational music, we're well prepared.
So I've got to ask you about teaching. I know you taught firefighters for many years, but you also have musical students too. Is that correct?
Used to, not for quite a few years now.
Not for a while. Do you miss it at all, or you don't miss it?
I would love to get back into it, but you got to have the right mindset when you're taking young people or even professionals. I've had professionals that I've worked with that want to learn flute improvisation or something like that. Or the real difficult ones are the beginners or the people that come out and they're like, say, 15, 16, 17 years old. And they heard me play at the high school or something. Because, a while ago, I was having my quartets or quintets play at high schools. And then we'd have what we call a master class afterwards. And then they'd look me up and they'd want to learn maybe some flute stuff or whatever else, in regards to improvisation. Usually it was basically intonation or articulation or something like that. And you got to be careful I am not what I would consider a master teacher, a maestro, so to speak.
Are you afraid of screwing them up?
No, I'm not afraid of screwing them up. I'm afraid of what I may give them that may become a bad habit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily a bad habit. For instance, a flutist would come to me and say, "Hey, man, I want to learn how to improvise. How do you do that weird sound you get?" Or some goofy technique I'm doing. And I'll say, "Okay, yeah, I'll be more than glad to show you, but here's the things you got to do to get to that point." So I'll say, "Well, you got to learn these N harmonics. I want you to blow M harmonics." And they're like blown. They're like, "Wow, man." I go, "Just work at it." I give them some notation to work at. And I'd say, "Do that." And then the next thing you know, they're going to a classical instructor. And the classical instructor's going, "Whoa, who taught you to do that?" You know, it's not that it's wrong or it's right. It's just a different approach.
And they say to that instructor, it's just some guy who got tossed out of every conservatory in America.
That's right. And I tell them that. It's I've studied with some great people, and they've always told me that I am just not disciplined in classical repertoire.
But it's not laziness. You just don't want to have that discipline. Or is it laziness?
I don't want to have that discipline. I'm too busy always improvising. I know it's maybe not right, but I don't want to practice the Mozart concerto in D for the rest of my life,
Sure. Well,
along with the rest of the repertoire. That's where I'm not that talented. Because if I was an orchestra player, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and I've studied under Donald Peck, when they put a chart in front of you to play Tchaikovsky's third flute part, these guys are able to read it right off the page, facilitate it, do what they do. How do they do it? Scales.
scales.
Lots and lots of scales, lots of etudes, I've got volumes and volumes of exercises and etudes and arpeggios, and I'll just take a book one day and just go. Now, some guys play it right out of memory. I go, really? Whoa, dude, I can't do that. I can't memorize the entire Mozart concerto in D for flute. I can remember parts of it. All you need to do is watch James Galway perform, or any major classical flutist. They hardly look at the page.
Because they've played it so much.
Well, they practice their living asses off. But I think I told you before, there are just some gifts from God that were given to us as human beings.
Absolutely.
And we are so grateful to have these people to hear. And I'm not one of them. So,
All I know is I like what I hear, and that's all that counts. And for an audience member, that really is all that counts. You either like it or you don't like it.
I agree.
It's opinion, and just do you get it or do you not get it? It's that simple. It's like looking at a piece of art in a museum. You either get it or you don't get it. If you don't get it, you walk away.
If it strikes your soul, it's your soul.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I'm curious, are you still physically working out like you did when you were a firefighter? I know you were doing exercising almost every day. Are you still doing that?
I exercise every day. I usually do 40 to 45 minutes a day of weights and different exercises.
And that helps you with your arms, which you need, obviously.
Well, it's not so much that as I just want to stay as physically fit as possible. I have a bad osteoarthritis.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bone disease that's really starting to take over, fighting certain physical elements. So I work out every day to back that off. You know what I mean? Got to keep going.
Oh, I understand. I understand.
Like they say, keep walking, man. Get up.
Exactly right. Use it or lose it.
Exactly. I guess that's a better way of saying it. So thank you.
Do you also do things to keep your lungs going?
Playing the flute.
That's what does it.
Well, it's very strange. It's a diaphragm thing. It's everything. So, it's phrasing. You're moving a lot of air for an hour straight. I'm not saying on my lips, the thing is attached to my lip. I have to take short breaks all the time, Well, this ain't going right. Better back off a little bit, get the embouchure recentered, take a deep breath, blow this out. Sometimes you can inhale too much and you become overextended or distended, and now you can't perform. So you got to be careful of the amount of air you take in and the amount of air you put out.
You've lost me on that last one. Explain that a little more. You can take in too much air. What happens?
Well, it's like the same form of hyperventilation, where you keep taking it in, and you think you're going. This is another discipline of flute playing, or any wind player has to know the amount of air he has left, what's in reserve, what he can expel out to maintain a specific phrase, so to speak. So that takes another form of discipline within the playing, not only the tongue, the lips, but the air.
Well, it's all of a piece. You're using every part of your body, basically.
And you got the little fingers, and you got the arm. Well, you know what? Yeah, it could get a little tired now and then, but you know what? That means you're playing too long, stupid. Put it down, take it right. Like Miles Davis used to say with Coltrane, and he's just Coltrane was he would just keep going crazy. I don't know if you ever heard Coltrane, but he's just all over the place, and he'd be playing within a piece, like a Miles piece or whatever, and he's got his solo, and he's just going and going and going, and he does, you can't stop, you can't shut him down, and that's all right. But Miles told him once, he goes, "Hey man, I have to keep saying something." And Miles said, "Why don't you just take the horn away from your lips, man, and then think?" So, because Coltrane was an explorer, and that's what a lot of us jazz musicians are. We're constantly exploring. You give us a solo, we're not sure if it's going to go 12 bars, 16 bars, 32, 64 bars. Could be anything. But that's what's great about the interaction of a quartet or a quintet. They're listening. Hey man, is he going? Are we going? And that's what's great about jazz and improvisational music. You're always on the edge, and the audience is with you on that edge. They're like,
So, as you're playing, how do the others know when you're going to come out of the solo if you don't know when you're coming out?
they know the form, and they know that we're going to be okay, man. You're going to take 16. You're going to take 32. If it goes longer, we know how to stay with you. But they know where it's going. They know the next change.
That's the key, is that they have a clue as to where things are. Is there a signal that you give, or do they just know?
Could be a visual signal. It could be just that they know the music so well. They know who the next soloist will be, if there is a second soloist after the first soloist, which many times there is. And they know the form of the piece. Like we can have a form, you know what I'm saying? I could have an A form, which is set over a set of chords. It's a 12 bar A form, let's say, of a melody with a bass line. Boom, doom, 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 boom, doom, doom, boom, doom, doom, doom. Now all right, that's your open. Then when I climb on the melody or the chord comes in, that's still an open. Then when the melody comes in, that's A. That starts A. Boom, doom, doom, da dee da do do da do do da 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 dee da do do da do da 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 bo da da. You know what I mean? And now the whole form A done. Good. Now we're going to move on to B. B is maybe the chorus, or what we would call melodically or whatever, a chorus. So it's A B, then it's A B again, and then we'll go to C. And C will be maybe a connection point. To rotate back, we'll play the A section again. We'll let that go for the melodic reinstatement. And then from that, it goes to solo. So now the soloist picks it up and he says, I am soloing over A, B, and C. And over A, one more set, and then I'm going to shut up. And the next soloist comes in on the A again. And see, a lot of audience, that's why it's constantly in motion. It's in motion, but the audience just rides the wave. See,
Exactly right. And that wave is cool when you're in the audience and you're feeling that. And it is a feeling. It's not an intellectual thing. It's an emotional thing.
no, we don't want. If it was intellectual,
It'd be boring.
people would start saying, "I can't handle this shit."
It would be boring. You want it to be emotional. That's true for all of the storytelling arts. And I consider music to be a storytelling art.
Absolutely.
And in fact, you put titles on these songs and you put a title on your album because, in a way, you are telling stories. And I think that that's the way it should be. Well, I've been having just the third of a series of conversations with Michael Mason, and we're going to wind the show down just a little bit. You've clearly been around a while, and you've shared stories with us before. And I'm wondering if you have maybe another story that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny from all of your many years doing this.
The only other one that I have would be it was a club date in the city of Chicago. I come in with the flutes, everything's ready to go. You know, we got the stage is kind of set up. It's a relatively decent club in the city, and we're working and everything's going. The sound check was great, everything was great, and we get up there and we start the tune off. I'm counting it off, and they're going, and then all of a sudden there's this. I don't know how it got in there. It was this was I believe it was the one of the Chicago Jazz Festivals way back before it became the Jazz Festival. I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I'm ready to play and introduce. First time we hear it, there's a bird that just flies through the stage in between all of us. And I'm like going, wow, what the hell was that? You know, I'm like, man. And we hear them. There's a lot of birds up in the rafters because they had a big canopy over the crowd, you know what I mean, or on the stage, but the crowd was out there. And then all of a sudden I'm playing, and this thing comes through again, parks its ass on the end of my flute,
Oh.
little chipper thing, you know, and everybody's like, and I'm going, what's so, you know, what's up? The next thing, you know, I just took a glimpse of it and it's gone. It flew away. And then my drummer kind of told me, he goes, you know, Mike, he says, there must be a God over your shoulders because, man, there was a sparrow that just landed on the end of your flute. And I said, get out of here. Nobody ever got a picture of it, but apparently it happened.
That's pretty wonderful.
That's pretty crazy.
That's a bird that really wanted to be up close to your music.
No, it's probably because of those atrocious notes. Because I was playing some really avant-garde stuff, you know, really high shrilling whistle stuff and everything, you know, just doing my thing. It may have attracted like a sparrow, you know how high pitched birds sound.
Sure, of course.
There's times that I'd go out in the woods back in the day, just trying to mimic bird calls or something like that.
Did they respond to you?
I don't know if they did or not, but I thought it was cool because Eric Dolphy did it. So
well, that's a pretty good person to emulate, that's for sure. All right, so last question for you today, Michael. What's the best piece of advice that you can give to those who are just starting out in the business, or maybe they're in a little bit trying to get to that next level?
You know, it's not the end of the world if it's something you're checking out and it doesn't work out, that's fine. But if you really got a heart for it, pursue it, get a good teacher, and don't let anybody ever say to you that you're not good enough, because you are. Deep down, we're all good enough. There's certain talents that everybody has. You don't have to be a James Galway. You don't have to be a John Coltrane to make your mark.
I think that's very wise advice, and I think that holds true for most of the arts. You don't get to the top of the heap without spending a lot of time, effort, and energy working on it to get there.
Years. Could be years. Be prepared.
And like you say, discipline and digging in and keep going at it.
That's right.
Michael Mason, this has been a lot of fun for me to talk to you for the third time, and I thank you very much for your time, your energy, and of course, your fabulous wisdom. I greatly appreciate it.
Steve, it's always great to spend time with you, man. Pass the word. We love you. Take care and keep doing a great job, because you do.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. And as promised now, to end today's show, Michael has given us a gift of his serene music. So please sit back and enjoy Michael Mason's beautiful composition, Moments, from his album, Luminosity. And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.